Thanks. All right, let me see if I can video you and what you're doing on the board. Thank you, Kia, for your cameo. I'll put it there, maybe.
You won't be able to see the board, but it's okay. I'm going to talk about it anyway. So
Okay, I'll just move it here, and that will be good enough. Your tootsies.
What is the time?
I'll have to have a look. I don't know.
1:50. 1:50.
Does that look like it's recording? You?
Oh, it's on me. Yeah. I don't know if it's actually recording those.
Yeah, I've got it recording.
Yeah.
Double check it. Yep.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So today we're going to do a little bit of practical work as well. I'm going to cover two different topics. So I'm going to talk about the seasons and how they can affect us and what a class might look like and poses that we can bring to a class to help bring balance to the doshas in each season. And then I'm going to talk about the art of touch. That's what I do. So, nearly every day in my room. And I just believe that the way that we touch people with the right intention is really powerful. It can either be really harmful or it can be really positive for somebody. So we're going to have a little play with touching each other in a very calm, intentional way. So I'll show you how we do that after. And we might just run through maybe two poses, or Akela might add another pose in, just to do a little bit of an adjustment, but more of a deepening of an adjustment so that you can feel what it's like as a recipient and also what it feels like to actually feel into somebody's body. So we'll talk about that as well before we go into that. So I've drawn this chart here. It's a good way of just seeing which doshas are dominant at certain times this season. So you've got Vata is predominant when mainly autumn, when the winds are up, the air is dry, and then it also follows into early winter. But the deep-seated winter, we have Kapha that shows up. And we'll go into these in detail in a minute. Then as spring comes around through here, we have Vata can also come up through spring, but generally Kapha will also still be quite dominant in spring, especially when there's lots of allergies. When it comes springtime out of winter and everyone's sneezing a lot and there's a lot of mucus still, it's almost like through the deep winter, we have all these toxins that build up, ama, which is basically like sticky mucus inside the body. And as the weather warms, it's like the ice starts to melt, the same thing happens in our body and things start to shift. And that's why cleanses are really important at change of season, because that's when we need to start shifting the heaviness out of the body. So Kapha is generally really through there. And a little bit of Vata might take play in spring if there's winds and those sort of elements and qualities as well. Summer is definitely Pitta when the sun is at its hottest, and then we take that circle around. So I thought that was a good visual way to see what doshas are mainly dominant in those seasons. So if we're thinking about Vata, we'll start with Vata in the autumn season. So the qualities that come into autumn, which we're in now, and we even talked a little bit about this morning, that we feel a little bit heavier, a little bit more tired. It's starting to get colder in the morning, so we're having to add more layers. The air is drier and the winds can be pretty changeable. So in autumn, the weather is very variable, which is a very strong quality of Vata. And that can also affect us in our moods too. So when the weather is variable, can anyone remember what the emotions of Vata are that come up when the weather's like that? Or if the winds are high or Vata's high?
Is it agitation and frustration, or
no? That's really more Pitta.
Okay.
Yeah. Typical of what you've been experiencing. Anxiety. Anxiety can be really high for people at this time, and worry. There's that unsettling, ungrounded feeling in us when you know, you just go for a walk on the beach and it's super windy and it can feel pretty disturbing or aggravating in a way for the mind. Yeah, so you can feel really ungrounded. Yeah. The nervous system is really affected, which is also creating anxiety. Insomnia, just feeling rattled inside of us. Our skin will be dry. So this is when we really need to be oiling our bodies and really nourishing and finding really grounding practices through autumn. And the fatigue. And as I said, the kapha starts to accumulate once it really sets into that more icy cold. That's when we want to eat more, really be like bears and hibernate. And vata shows up in the body as, you know, people coming into a class in that time of season, their body's starting to feel quite stiff. Vata sits as well in the joints of the body. So there'll be stiffness, there'll be dryness, there'll be just sort of cracking and popping of joints. So a lot of joint practices are really good for vata through autumn season.
Would that be more yin then?
So yes, so when we want to ground vata, we want to really create a slower practice, a more mindful practice. Anything, say, like a vinyasa that's really fast is going to completely aggravate vata in the mind and the body, because they can't just be in the pose, like you were saying this morning. It's so good to have the openness between the poses. That's what vata needs. Vata needs, and that's why we're all creating that right now, is let me just breathe into that posture, let me have some space to move. Vata loves to move, so maybe soft movements in the poses are really good. Restorative is helpful, as is yin. So more hatha, yin, and restorative are really good practices in autumn. Warmth is also good because vata is aggravated. So if you had not Bikram as such, but a warm room is also really helpful, because if someone's quite aggravated in vata and they come into a really cold room, I know myself when I feel like that, I just feel everything constricts in my body and I just feel like I don't want to be in here. I really want to feel warm, and that's why like a beautiful fire into the fireplace where you just make the environment warmer and more cozy.
Candles can help too, can't they? They create that environment. Yeah,
because they're bringing that element of fire in as well. So anything that's going to create a really comfortable space is helpful for vata. Some of the, I think I've lost a page here. I think so. So if we're talking about yoga poses, so we've talked about joint practices. Cat-cow variations are great, where we're warming up the spine and we've got that movement is really good for vata. Sun salutations are great, but to be done mindfully and slowly rather than fast-paced, where we can do injury when we've got cold, stiff joints. So more repetition is good for vata, so that they can really go into the poses more deeply but slowly. Anything that's grounding, so if you think about any poses where our feet are grounding into the earth, are really important. So all of your warrior variations, they also, warrior is really good for reducing anxiety as well. We're grounding, we're opening up the heart space, we're allowing more breath, more prana to run through, and grounding the nervous system. Tree pose is another one, because we're grounding and rooting into the earth. And it also, the good thing about tree pose as well is that we're actually calming the senses, because we're looking at a drishti point. So when we have that one focus, that helps vata to calm down everything else and the distractions that are going around. So vata is very, very easily distracted by their surroundings. So if someone was next to them in the past, it was really agitated and moving a lot, that would be enough to really, put someone out of whack. So tree pose is great. Cobra is great because, again, you've got your hips in the earth, you're opening up through the chest, allowing more breath is really good. Happy baby, Paschimottanasana, which is the forward bend. It's great for the tight spine. Vata can sit in the lower base of the spine as well. So anything that's forward folding, anything where we are actually lowering down is actually going to calm Vata as well. It's going to reduce any kind of anxiety. And legs up the wall is another great one to get that energy and heart, the blood flowing back up to the heart. Pranayama for Vata. One of the best ones I find is Brahmi breath, which is the humming bee breath. And I'm going to do that in my practice when I take us, so you get to experience that. But it's such a calming practice of pranayama because it really calms all the senses, because we're closing down the eyes and we're plugging in the ears. So it takes away all the distractions, and the exhale can be longer. And also the sound vibration has an effect to really calm down the entire nervous system. So one of the beautiful practices for autumn is to do Brahmi breath. Nadi Shodhana is another one, because we're alternating nostrils, bringing the right left brain into balance. So anything with longer breaths, so nothing that's quick and fast that's going to aggravate Vata. Any questions with Vata?
No, that sounds, I was thinking about that, and I think that's really, I have found myself sometimes being more easily distracted, which I'm not doing. So coming into this season, makes sense.
Yeah.
The more in tune you get, the more sensitive you are.
Absolutely.
Which sucks, but it's also wonderful.
Yeah. So true, right?
You notice everything. Yeah.
And I'm going to talk about the senses a bit in the next section too, because I think the senses are really, really important. And I think as yoga teachers, when we come into a space, you know how we feel when we come into our Kella's space, because she's set up a space that creates warmth. It makes us feel held and nurtured. The little things make such a difference. Like, I'm not joking, just the way that someone set up your mat when you come in, the candles, the intent that you can see that Kella's created, that energy. There's nothing worse than when a teacher rushes into a class and they're bringing that energy into a class and they haven't grounded in that space. I feel that straight away. Like instantly feel that. So it's really important, especially if you've got a lot of Vata people in your class, to rock up, be there early, create space, maybe lights and incense, or you know, whatever it is that's going to bring in calm, or lights, and put some essential oils in the diffuser that are grounding at that time. So things like frankincense and lavender, any of your resin oils like cedarwood, things like that. Yeah,
even that grounding blend that young living do is beautiful.
It's so good, isn't it? So anything that's going to help, that is going to bring people to your class. Yeah, because they feel held. First impressions, hey, what do they say these days on
3
the
seconds.
internet? 3 seconds. If you don't make that impression in 3 seconds when someone walks into your yoga room, it's the same as being online, right? To read something that they'll feel that and sense that. So if we go into Kapha, Kapha is deep winter and the early spring, and the elements that are really predominant are earth and water. The heaviness of winter. So you'll be feeling heavier, more lethargic, wanting to really hibernate and go inward. Even getting to a yoga class for a couple of people is going to be super hard, because they want to stay in their cave and they don't want to venture out and move their body. So the excessive cold and water element can accumulate in the lungs and the chest. This is the seep through here that will accumulate in a couple of people, and in most people through winter. As you know, it's commonly colds, flus, things like that. And there's also a lot of dampness in our environment too. So whatever we're feeling out in our environment, we're actually feeling in our bodies as well. Hence why we talked about last time, we bring in the opposite qualities to bring balance into the space and into our bodies. So yeah, we'll eat more, we'll sleep more, and we'll move less through our winter time. And we'll overindulge. We'll eat heavier foods, fattier foods, oilier foods, anything that we feel is just going to nourish us up and help us sleep for longer and become more stagnant in our energy, right? The mental side, there'll be fogginess, there'll be depression, also possibly some anxiety as well. but the heavier emotions are generally there through winter and early spring. So for this time of the year, early morning practice is the best because it gets us moving. So those 6 o'clock classes are the best way to get our bodies moving and waking up everything in our body through winter. We need to move in a vigorous way. We need to wake up the body. The practice needs to be much stronger than what it may be in autumn, because we really want to shift that heavy energy in our body as much as possible. So a higher energy is needed in the class. And I know Arkella's talked about, the different energies that we bring into our yoga practice, and how sometimes we need the calm voice and we need the whatever, but then sometimes we need to, hey, we're strong in our warrior here, we're lifting our energy up. And in Kapha energy, we're really wanting to lift up into our chest and heart space, and we're really wanting to open up through the chest as much as possible to be able to get more flow through the heart and lungs. We also need focus with the movement as well. So more focused meditations, more focus in our practice, but a strong focus, so that you're keeping that person on the mat and keeping them going, because for them it's really difficult to stay in that practice and hard for them to find that energy.
So would then a strong sun salutation, like repetitious, but getting stronger maybe for several, and then just adding some variations, but kind of that repetition, so it's not too much for them to think about, but getting the body working really hard. Is that
definitely
the kind of practice you bring?
Absolutely. So I think it's more maybe stronger holds as well, longer holds,
stronger,
deeper holds, repetition,
more sweat.
More sweat. Whereas the Vata person, if you did lots of repetitions, they're going to fatigue really easily. So in autumn, if you've got someone that's out of balance with Vata, and it's like, Danny was saying, she's feeling those elements, I need something calm today. If we push Danny in that state, Danny's going to fatigue and feel worse because her adrenals have just had this massive overload and she's pushed through. So whereas a Kapha person in winter, you can push them, you can make them sweat.
And it feels better afterwards.
It feels better afterwards, because there's more stagnancy in the body. So things like Ashtanga are more beneficial through winter. Your vinyasa flow. Hatha is still great, but the longer holds, stronger poses are really good, and hot yoga is something more warmth. So if you're looking at your environment, Kapha loves warmth as well. So Kapha is aggravated also by cold. Someone that's typically Kapha has really thick skin and also quite cold and oily to touch. So we need to bring the warmth into our practice as well. So anything that's going to warm from the inside out, and also in our environment. So heating, candles, all of those things as well. So some of the practices or postures that I've come up with are sun salutations, but inviting heat and mobility. So maybe longer with your sun salutations than you would for Vata, and more repetition. Your warrior variations are also great because they're opening up through the heart space. Back bends are brilliant for Kapha because they, if you're thinking in winter too, you're spending a lot more time on the couch or more in this position. When we get cold, we're kind of bringing everything inward. So we need to bring everything outward. Backward bends create a lot of energy in the body, and they get that movement through the heart and also through the spine. Any heart opening postures? Angel wings. Just bringing the arms out. I think you did one of those poses with angel wings at one point. Anything where you're opening up the chest, cobra, standing bow. No, not standing bow, bow on the floor with the, bow pose.
Dancer maybe as well.
Dancer as well. A bow when you're holding both feet on the floor and your tummy's on the floor.
Lay on your belly.
Lay on your belly. And that also ignites Agni, your digestive flow too. So anything But kapha is going to be sluggish. The digestive fire isn't going to be as strong as well. So anything that's going to help with digestion is great. Even, is it Supta Baddha Konasana where your legs are like this and you're laying over the bolster? Which one's this one?
Supta Baddha Konasana. So Baddha Konasana, feet together, knees wide. That's saddle pose.
I think that over there.
Yeah, or supine Virasana.
Supine Virasana.
Yeah, or saddle pose. Yeah.
So anything that you're opening up the chest and the stomach is really good for kapha. Spinal rolls, we're talking about them at lunchtime. Spinal rolls are great where you're rocking and moving the body, you're getting life force pumping into the body, getting the body moving. Leg lifts and twists are great as well because you're moving the accumulation through the body and the digestive organs when we're twisting. So we're massaging our internal organs when we're doing any kind of twist.
Detoxifying.
Yeah, detoxifying. Can anyone think of any others that might be good that I've missed? Half moon's another good one as well.
Chaturanga.
Yeah, Chaturanga's great.
Yeah, any inversions.
Inversions for kapha, yeah, absolutely would be great. And I think shoulder stand would be great. Anything really, because you're moving prana through the body when you're tipping the body upside down. I don't think there's any that would be suitable. You?
No, I'm just thinking that in winter with kapha energy, inversions feel impossible because you're heavy, because you feel heavy. So how you would lots of maybe preparation like dolphin pose and that kind of stuff that really gets you moving, and then do some little kicks and handstand prep where you're just doing like hops, handstand hops and that kind of stuff. And if you had a more advanced class, then you could move into some of the inversions. But I reckon that in winter,
would be enough.
Yeah, in winter, getting into a whole inversion class. I don't know. For me personally, I feel in summer it's just easy. My body feels lighter. But it's good. It's good to do it. I just think it's a bit harder. Yeah.
But even still doing the prep work is enough, isn't it? To open everything up. And even what's the one that I was away for where you
Dolphin.
Yeah, I think you said that. It's so good because they're having to really open up through the chest.
And the push-ups in dolphin are really good too, I think.
Yeah. So anything like that prep work is great.
Camel pose? Chest?
Which one's camel? Camel, yes, back bend. Yeah, anything back bend is great. Even just bridge on the ground is great. Setu anything where you are creating energy. So backward bends are great. Any of the standing postures, anything that's going to really open up the body.
So if you had a class that wasn't maybe up for back bends in an active way, you could finish with that sequence that I often do, and Anna knows it quite well, the three back, the Supta Baddha Konasana over the bolster. The bolster's long across the spine, knees wide, laying back, and then you come up and you put the bolster this way and the bum's on the mat and you curl back over the bolster of the head, and then you go for the psoas stretch.
Perfect.
That would be really beautiful. And people always love that as well. And then you've got your back bends and your release and chest opening without too much effort if people went up with the back bends.
And especially if it was a night class too, where you're wanting to go
finish like that.
Finish like that would be beautiful, and you would wrap them in rugs. And pillows
snuggle
on,
their feet.
Snuggle them up, wrap their feet.
My favourite.
And I had to do that for the class last night, didn't you?
What did you? The snuggle people up.
They loved it.
I make my daughter do it for me now when she puts me in bed. Wrap my feet up, please.
You pick the spot. Well, makes you feel good.
It does.
You do enough for her. Trikonasana is another great one. And even Malasana, opening up the hips and bringing the heart forward. Boat pose is another really good one. Navasana.
Pretty much almost everything.
Anything that's
hard.
strong and hard is great for kapha.
Yeah.
And for pranayama, One of the best ones is Kaplavati breathing.
Yeah, we need to do some more pranayama, the breath of fire, you know that, because Jodie uses that to go to sleep.
Yeah, I remember she said that. I was like, what?
Oh,
That's how,
It's great. If it
hot
helps you
are.
sleep.
it does, actually does. I love the
But
way
you
all the
probably
energy
need the
goes
opposite
through
of
my
that.
body, like, and then I'm just like, oh yeah.
So we
I can hold my
do,
breath for
we
so long
do some of
too
that,
sometimes.
the breath of fire, a couple of times there.
Yeah.
We'll
Well,
do
that'd be good if you go over that. So
Yeah.
Kaplavati is stimulating digestion. It's building heat in the body.
It's used a lot in Kundalini yoga too.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it can be a little bit awkward to do it first, can't it?
It's
But
hard.
It's hard,
Yeah.
right? Because you've got to get that snapping and pumping of the stomach. It's so good for the digestion. I think it's a great one to do in the morning because kapha is highest in the morning between 6 and 10 a.m. is kapha time. So if you can do Kaplavati in that
Kapha time.
kapha time, perfect. Try it in the morning, see how it goes. And maybe try your humming bee at night. The humming bee,
Yeah, I
right?
should, yeah.
Swap it around and see how it feels.
You might not actually cover so much so.
I
Because
don't
you're not
remember
buzzing as
anyway,
much.
so I don't care.
Ujjayi breath is also great because Ujjayi builds heat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we've got a few pranayamas to go through.
Yeah. Bastrika is another good one, which is
Oh, no, that one, what's that one?
so it's the fist. So you
Oh,
inhale.
yeah. You did that. You were doing that in your dance.
Oh yeah, I was too.
too. Like, what's Melissa
Did
up
that
to?
open? Something
Yeah.
it must have.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's inhale, exhale. So it's pumping, like it's pumping heat into the
What's that
body.
called?
Bastrika.
Bastrika.
Yeah, Bastrika. But you could even do this. You could bring this into a standing pose where you've got, you know.
I often do it in Kali pose actually.
Yeah.
I do star and then
Yes,
and then
I
start.
think I've done that with you. Yeah, so it's similar. You
Yeah.
can do this kind of thing
Yeah,
or
yeah.
whatever, just to
Yeah.
kind of build energy. In the
You
body.
did some of that squatty stuff the other day. That
I
was
did,
fun,
but
wasn't
with
it?
the energy gun, with your energy
That's
gun,
right. Yeah.
Oh, did you?
the same thing. But you could absolutely do it with your arms clapped.
Hey, in saying gun, I reckon you should add energy to it. Because gun in yoga sounds a bit like bad boy business.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
shoot
an
up.
energy gun. Like,
Yeah. I need to change them.
I'm gonna shoot
Get
you.
your gun out.
Shoot, who's ever needing?
Any other pranayams you can think of that would build heat that I haven't heard?
Well, Ujjayi is kind of, I find it cooling and strengthening rather than heat producing, but it's conserving.
Conserving energy.
Yeah.
It's mainly warming, but if you
Is it?
breathe through the mouth, like if you let
Yeah.
air out of the mouth, it's
Yeah.
cooling. So if you inhale,
I
and
reckon
you,
I do it through the mouth.
so I think some you can still
I
do
have to try
Ujjayi, but maybe
Yeah.
sometimes just bring in the exhale
Yeah.
through an open
Yeah.
mouth
Yeah.
will cool.
I have to give that a go.
Yeah, but generally it will build heat and build energy, but I still don't think it's a bad thing to be
Yeah,
doing in
yeah,
summer. You can
no.
still be doing it.
Yeah, it's still good.
Yeah, it's still good.
And you could use the oils in the class
Mm.
for the seasons as well and
Mhm.
for the energy level.
Yeah, so kapha oils would
Yeah.
be things like
I was thinking energy,
energy would be great.
lemongrass, lemon.
Citrus oils are great
Yeah.
because they stimulate
Spearmints. Yeah.
happy hormones, happy feelings. Anything that's invigorating really is fun. Yeah. And even just doing warming up, you know, with energy and things like this, you know, like tapping or anything that's just going to wake up the body. So then we move into summer, which is when the sun is at its strongest, fire element in summer, which is our Pitta dosha. And the qualities of Pitta are hot, sharp, forceful, oily, penetrating, intense. So summer can be really intense, especially on Pitta people. And that means that you can have Pitta in your constitution as your secondary dosha, or it can be your first primary dosha. We all have them in different amounts, if you remember me talking about in the first class. So if your second dosha is Pitta and it's pretty high, then you will still be affected by a Pitta imbalance as well. So balancing the heat penetrating qualities of summer. Obviously, you can do this through your food and things like that too, like aloe vera and cucumber and melons and coconut water, things like that to cool down pitta. But we want more cooling and gentle qualities to calm pitta in summer. Naturally, we are more motivated in summer, we're more uplifted, we're lighter, we want to take action, we want to do more. But we also need to be careful not to push ourselves too much because we can feel exhausted in the heat of the day. And even just when we're talking about summer, it's not ideal to do a class in the middle of the day. It's best to do it in the morning or late at night. If you've got pitta people coming into a class at lunchtime that are aggravated in pitta and you're building heat in them, they're not going to feel good when they leave. So morning and evenings are best. And when pitta's out of balance, they'll have smelly sweat. They sweat a lot. You tell those typical pitta people in a class that just
Smelly sweat.
yes,
Smelly butt crack sweat.
Nice, good visual. But they'll sweat on the mat. You've seen those people where they'll just be dropping of sweat. Burning sensations and indigestion will occur in the gut, inflammation, rashes, fevers, acne, blemishes, and in their mental state, they're going to be really critical of themselves. They're going to be irritable, like Michael talked about, snappy. They might be the people that are questioning you and, you know, asking why you did that in that yoga class, or holding you accountable for things and being more judgmental. They're your pitta people. When they're out of balance, they'll bring those qualities to you in the group. Yeah. So to those people, we need to bring some more balancing qualities into the yoga class to help them. Okay, but there's types of yoga classes for pitta people are actually really restorative and yin, you know, are great.
The one that they least want. They're the people that least want to do those classes, aren't they?
And look at Jodie, like she's prime example.
Yeah, how much you're benefiting from.
How much she loves her yin now. Yeah, and she loves those elements that are cooling and calming now that she's bringing into her life. Whereas naturally, someone like Jodie would want to push because it's part of her being, it's her constitution that she naturally wants to push and strive and achieve, but actually to bring balance and calm and softness, she needs to calm down and do those slower, gentle, more mindful practices. Yeah.
There's some sequences that I like to use in summer that are kind of called like moon salutations.
I've got that in
Oh, have you?
yeah.
I won't steal your thunder then.
No, you can talk about them.
Oh, no, you
fine. Well, I don't know much about moon salutations, but to me it is more about grounding. And
they're slower and floor based, more flow based.
Floor based. Yeah, more floor based, slower, more intentional, and holding still in those poses too, right? Yeah. So rather than the sun where we're lifting the energy up, we're actually bringing the energy down into the earth.
And just even the head, the gaze, you know, and the attention being drawn down and within, closing eyes, you know, I had a teacher who used to do blindfold classes sometimes. It's actually, I don't know what it's called, but she's pretty traditional. And in yoga, there's this binding you can do with these really long yoga bandages. There's a special binding, and you basically cover the whole of your face except for your nostrils and the whole practice, and maybe in your lips. And the whole practice is done with the blindfold, and the teacher taking you through while you're wearing the blindfold. It's pretty amazing. It's very it's very restorative. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of queer at first. It's like you don't know where you are, and you know where's your mat, but it's beautiful.
But trusting in the process. I think there's so much learning about yourself that you would do in that.
And then your body that we move around with Jack Russell. So
So it was all on the mat on the floor?
Yeah, you don't move around. Yeah, it's all floor based. I mean, it's still a strongish class, but it was all just on the floor.
And that could also be very aggravating for some people too.
Oh, absolutely.
Like,
It was quite an
massively.
advanced class.
Yeah.
Yeah, you wouldn't just pop that into
No.
a class. No.
No,
Yeah. I'm going to blindfold you all. You've never met me before, and I'm going to teach you about the sensation.
Then trust me. Trust me. Yeah, but if you've got someone in that's highly anxious and then you're putting stuff like that on them, they could totally freak them out.
Yeah.
I'd love to try it though.
Yeah. I have to find out a bit more about it. I don't know anyone that does it now.
I've not heard of it. So naturally, these people are going to be competitive in class. They're the ones that we're going to like really be competitive with themselves mainly, not with others as much, but with themselves, and be hard on themselves and be critical and judging their practice and not necessarily listening into what their bodies need. So those sort of people, you want to really be not pushing them to their limit, actually probably pushing them to about 80% so that they can feel into the body, because often the mind-body connection is not quite there because they're in their heads a lot. So they're assessing their, exploring what's happening, but it's all up in here. So you want to really ground them into their bodies so that they can be present, and to eliminate all of those senses around them so that they're not feeling like they need to be competitive. So closing down the eyes, things like that are really helpful so they can be inward. And lowering the gaze, like Akela just touched on the gaze. With Kapha people, the gaze can be up because we want them to come out of their shell. With Pitta people, down at the floor because they're looking out, striving all the time. So their gaze is better to be more inward and more down. Vata people, probably somewhere in the middle with their gaze. Their Drishti point, always bringing the focus in, is good.
And maybe that's where the inversions for Pitta people is that focus on the child's pose at the end of the inversion so that the energy doesn't spin away from them. The benefit they've gotten from the pose doesn't become this whirlwind, it becomes their internal resource.
Totally.
I think that would be really beneficial for
absolutely. I think for the Pitta people it's more actually holding them back in a sense. To really go to contain, feel and contain in that pre-practice before just the ego popping in and popping up. Like they'll get more benefit from actually going slower, and even in the counter pose afterwards, putting more benefit, like more emphasis on the counter pose rather than that actual physical pose. If that makes sense. Because it is ego building, like you said, because it builds adrenaline, it builds.
Which at the end of the day just sends the benefit the wrong direction, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Doesn't help them in the end.
Yeah. But you would probably know that even in your class, like what sort of people, once you get to know them, what they can sort of cope with. More focused on the exhalation is good for Pitta people as well, through the breathing techniques.
To release the heat or what?
Yeah, to release the heat, but also on the exhalation, we're calming the nervous system down more. And for those Pitta people, generally, they've been running all day, busy striving. And so when they come into a class, if they're just trying to, grasp the breath like this and not really settling and ground right down and breathe down into the root, then they're going to still be up here, the energy, rather than grounding them down. Also, it's good to be playful with Pitta people. So enjoying more movement, laughing a bit, more playful. Like Akela's classes are perfect for that.
I'm a bit naughty in their classes.
Being naughty is perfect for those.
My mum looked at the badass goddess mug on my bench yesterday. She pointed at it and I'm like, she's like, that's perfect.
She knows you well. So you're perfect for those Pitta people that come in and they can probably almost initially, like new people to that would be like, what the hell? What is she on about? Like keep to the structure, keep to the focus, right? Whereas they actually need the more softening and the more playfulness and openness in that sense.
It takes them out of that rigidity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it takes them out of the rigidity.
And the competitiveness.
Totally.
Yeah.
So even just free movement in your cat-cow, like maybe the hips or maybe in standing postures, maybe just moving around and seeing what that feels like, where the hips can be in space and just playing with that movement is good for them. And also practicing kindness to themselves. So if you're doing any kind of meditation, bringing in through Pitta, not to be so hard on themselves and be kind to themselves, and creating flow and ease in their body rather than rigidity, pushing, striving. So that's some poses that I have got. Anything that's basically calming. Paschimottanasana is great, so even forward folding in is great because it's bringing them more inward. It's calming the mind, calming the senses. Tree pose, spinal twists are great. Headstands really good for Pitta as well, because it helps, it builds energy, but it gets the blood flowing in a way that kind of, it's going to the head because they're in the head so much that when they come back down, it settles everything. So those poses are really good. Anything with supine twists are really good, not necessarily standing and being competitive, but on the floor where they can't see people is better, because they're staying in their body more so. And the moon salutations was the other one. So really grounding into the earth, I think, is really good, and anything that's going to create more calm, more low impact even. So even if you're doing your lunges, you could be putting the knee on the floor instead of pushing them up and making them do it at 100%, but maybe just taking them into the more simplicity of those poses will give benefit. Okay, so mainly seated for Pitta is really good. With pranayama, Shitali is one of the best ones. It's the cooling breath where we hold the tongue. We're breathing in, and if you do that yourself, even just rolling the tongue.
If
You can feel the cold. Some people can't roll the tongue. That's right.
What is that called?
Shitali. Shit.
Yeah.
Ali, A-L. Shitali.
No, we're good.
Shitali. Japan's for Shitali. So it cools the body and mind, but it also reduces the body temperature in Pitta, and therefore reducing inflammation in the body. Nadi Shodhana is good. I think Nadi Shodhana is really good for all body types, really. It's one of the breaths. I don't know if you find that teaching people. Is
yeah, I do. Sensory
withdrawal.
No, sensory withdrawal. Most people like, but you can get a little bit, with any of those types. But Nadi Shirodhara.
Nadi Shodhana.
Nadi
Shodhana.
Shodhana. Most people like it if you give them long enough. I find that when you just do it quickly, and actually that was something that I was thinking about when you did your practice, that when you tell people to count, that's a lot for them. So you just let them go and then do one, and then just say at some point one more round. Because counting and doing it, because you're already measuring through the breath, I think is a bit tricky. But giving people long enough in Nadi Shodhana is good. Yeah. Shodhana.
Showing, not showing.
Yeah, I think doing it quickly is aggravating.
Yeah.
Doing it for less than a couple of minutes is aggravating. Giving people, 3-4 minutes is good.
Yeah, okay.
Is what I've found. And not pestering them about whether they're getting it right, not making the technique too much of a focus. Because that feels restricted, because it is a bit complicated.
So even in the way that, say, you're even holding down the nostrils, doing something that they feel comfortable with rather than doing it exactly this way.
Yeah.
Because then they're kind of going, well, that feels awkward, and now I'm going to focus on the nose.
Yeah. Because there's a lot going on, right?
Yeah.
Even your fingers on the head can feel funny.
Yeah. And if you've got a Pitta person in your class and you're teaching them that, and like Akhil said, you're focusing on the technique really strongly, they're going to then be in their head because they want to do it perfect.
Yeah.
So be like, oh crap, like this feels awkward, can't do it. Whereas if you were to not be so precise with that,
let them find it.
Yeah.
The other thing is the tip of the tongue placement on the liminal space in the mouth. So where the top palate, where the top of the teeth meet the gum, the point. So the tip of your tongue on that spot at the top of the teeth and where the gum meet, sort of on the gum, that balances the energy rivers as well. So if you put the tip of your tongue there, when you do any of the practices that allow you to have a free tongue,
It brings balance.
yeah, it brings incredible balance to the hemispheres.
Cool.
So I was doing that a lot in hospital actually, and that was helping
So
me.
you could have been doing that this whole time as well.
I was, but
Were
it
you
wasn't.
doing that?
Yeah, and I had fucking catheters. I had catheter in both arms, and they kept trying to move me, and I was like, "Don't keep my hands."
Keep my hands like this. I can understand why.
And the other thing that someone showed me the other day, which I found really useful, is if you run your tongue along the roof of your mouth until, you know how you've got like the palate bit and then it kind of curves up? Yeah?
Yeah.
The bit where it's kind of straight and then it curves up, there's like a little natural indentation.
Right back at the back though.
At the back,
Yeah, whereas it
where my tongue's going back.
just before it kind of curves right up. Not,
Oh, you mean more to the front?
yeah.
Just before it
Oh,
goes
at
up.
the front, so you've got the curve and then coming to the front of the curve.
If you've got, so there's your tufts, and then you've got like almost a straight bit just behind the teeth,
Yep.
and then it kind of goes up like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of around there,
Oh, yeah.
there's like an indentation.
It feels almost a little bit soft.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So if you put your tongue
I get that. That's good.
in that spot, it creates space in your brain cavity. So if you've got migraine, headaches, that kind of thing, that's
and
really
also
helpful.
too, when you do that, it's
Yeah,
actually
it releases the
releasing
jaw. Maybe that's why it does that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, but she taught me that and I was using that in hospital too, so that was helpful.
Yeah.
But that creates space, and I think that would be hard to teach in a class, but just for us,
Yeah.
that creates
Space.
space in the brain cavity and the head. Yeah.
Cool. I think that's all I had for. And Brahmi breath is still good for PCP as well. And then using things like sandbags. Do you have sandbags? Do you use sandbags?
I've just got my eye pillows.
Oh, because
Some of them have
experienced
sandbags.
them before. They feel really good over
Yeah.
the legs. In
You mean
muscle.
longer than eye pillows?
They're like this long.
Yeah.
They're full of sand. And they're like a weighted.
Yeah, nice.
Light
For the belly
bolster.
or, yeah.
Put them
yeah.
over the belly, or they're quite heavy, or over just this part of the legs feels really good. Things like that are great for Peter. And also Vata, because Vata needs grounding, but just to really earth them into
Shavasana, weighted blankets, and you can, for kids, you can buy the weighted toys, same sort of thing,
cool.
and lay them on their belly. There's a soft toy that's full of something like sand.
That's great. Yeah, it's very calming.
That'd be cute in a yoga class. Hand out some little
would
plushies,
be.
some weighted fluffies.
We've been
I
talking
remember
about
one
that
of
for
your
years,
classes
haven't we?
on our
Yeah.
hands,
pillows.
the eye pillows.
Yeah.
It feels
really
good.
nice.
Yeah. Anything that weights us down is
Yeah.
going to ground
Connects us
us
with the
and
earth.
connects us with the earth. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think all doshas can have that. Really, I mean, even if you've got a kapha person that's done a really strong class, they still want to feel grounded at the
Yeah.
end of that. They don't want to be leaving like this.
Yeah.
So it's still beneficial.
True.
Yeah.
Just to give you an update as well, Jason, so the CFS have now said that everything is under control.
Great.
An official notice.
Good. We haven't had anything for a while, have we?
No.
Yeah. Any questions on that before we go into the touch?
Nope.
No? Okay.
Do you mind me observing instead of participating?
Of course.
And do you think we should still record it, or is it going to be hard to record it? From that? If I
I
pause
mean,
it,
that's probably all over this stuff anyway with this work. I would say with touching people, he does it for a living, so I'm
he
sure
does, but it probably wouldn't hurt.
Well, he could just, you could leave it while I'm just doing the talk, and then once we start moving into the touch, you can turn it on.
Okay.
Okay. Does everyone need a break to the toilet, or you would be good?
need stockings.
I find this stuff so interesting
want
when you can
Okay, that's all right. I'm up.
You sure?
Yeah, thank you.
recognise in your own self like your behaviours, like and why. I find it so interesting. It's really cool.
And that's the gift, I think, of doing what we're doing with our colour, is to be able to, there's not very often that we get a very safe environment where we can go really deeply with ourselves and look at our patterns and why we do things and what helps.
And like even just, I feel like you have those undeniable moments when you're talking about what you're talking about and you go, but it's so me. Oh my God, that makes sense, but I like that. Or
I feel safe when life shows me those things.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love those moments.
Yeah, and they're very simple tweaks. Like what I'm talking about is really very subtle things. They're very simple things when we really think about it. I think intuitively we know these things, but to actually put them into practice, because people are so busy,
It's so true. It's just the practice. It's the commitment to the practice and the ritual, isn't it?
Yeah.
Of doing it.
And that's why I stress with the ritual. The ritual's so important to really bring us into our true self, and to be less reactive and to really find what we need each day.
Respond rather than react.
Yeah, respond rather than react, for sure.
Love that.
So we're going to talk about touch. Touch is one of our main sense organs, and we'll talk a little bit about the senses as well, but the skin is a gateway to healing, really is. And so when we're touching someone, we're connecting to touch receptors, which are going to affect our nervous system. And these receptors can influence us in a really good way, in a really positive way, or they can bring up trauma and can really aggravate us as well. So it's really important when we are touching somebody that we bring the right intent into that touch and the right situation. It's a bit like you were saying, Anna, with even just your meditation, just sensing and knowing that that wasn't the right time. We also need to be the same when we're about to touch somebody as well. So it can also play a massive role in our stress and our emotions. And through our sense organs, we're already sensing, when we come into a room, we're hearing sounds, we can hear the water, we can visually see, how does it feel on our skin, is it cold, are we warm? And just within those few moments of walking into a space, we have a perception. So what our senses do is they gather information. It's like a little information spot that goes up into our brain, which is where we find our perception. And our perception for each and every one of us can be very different depending on what's happening for us. So you may have someone that may have issues with hearing or seeing, and their perception, what they take, is going to be very different to the next person. So it's really important that we are aware of what we're bringing into that space when people are coming onto the mat. So with our perception, we're gathering all this information and it's building narratives in our mind. And we can already be prejudging what's going on. Haven't we all done that? Yeah. So even when someone walks into my massage space, I want them to feel the minute they come in, I light my candles, I make sure the lighting is right.
You're a
make sure
master
the
creator
smell-
of safe space.
Yeah, just making the smell right. It's everything. It's all those little elements that you can bring to make somebody feel safe and to have that instant perception of, I feel good here. Yeah, I'm going to feel held here. And I may not have even met that person at that point as a teacher. So when we, I just stop saying slow. Let's say slow 2 minutes.
You could just breathe.
And
take a breath in.
Yes. And also the senses are closely connected to our emotions and our memories as well. So even just a smell of someone cooking something when we walk into a room triggers our emotions and memories. And when people are coming into spaces, things may be triggered for them easily, depending on what's going on, depending on who else is in the room, depending on whether they're feeling someone else's energy as well, and is that triggering for them. There's so many different elements to look at there.
It's just, I guess, what you've been through that day too, because, you know, you might have one day that you're completely triggered and then the next day could have had the same environment and you've walked in and your response is so different.
Yeah.
Because it's what you've packed in your bag of shit
Yeah.
that you brought with you.
Yeah.
But you can create that space for people in a repetitious way with the same, if you can keep a consistent energy, the same type of welcome, you know, like the incense at the door for me, something people say, as soon as I enter your gates, I know, and then when the incense, and you know, there's these like markers, and so that when they come back, they remember they had a good experience. So you can, yeah, we all absolutely rock up every time with something new and all of that, but you can help people drop out of that by creating these little markers of reminders, and you know, the statues along the way, the driveway, and they're all deliberately placed so that people have those moments, you know, of I'm going to visit her. He's so sweet. He's so hello, boy. You fat loaf boy. You turned into a big loaf.
It's so true, Akela, because every time I come to your practice, they are the things I notice. The water.
It's the same.
statues.
It's the same. It's because it's repetitious.
It's
right?
repetitious,
Yeah.
and it's the same with me in my practice.
Yes,
I'm
absolutely.
repetitious with what I hold, and yes, I may change things slightly,
Mm.
but not a lot.
You
It's
think
very,
you-
very small things that make a difference.
And your welcome's the same. You know, your energy is consistent
Yeah,
when I arrive, and
yeah.
you know, the warmth of the room and like all the things.
It's all the things.
Yeah.
So that can really play a part
Mm.
in our yoga space as well.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about touch because I feel like since COVID and all of the things that have been happening around us, I feel like masks, that I think our society is craving touch and love more than ever before, but it's either people are really hungry for it or there's a big resistance because they're still in fear.
Mm.
And so, you know, that's really sad that some people still feel that way, but I feel deep in my heart that more touch is needed than ever before. When I first started practicing, which was years ago, I was touched continuously by my teachers and in an appropriate way. And I think that stopped probably in the last 10 years because of some things that may have happened with male teachers along the way, you know, like Vikram, and I think Patabi Joyce has all been, I saw some photos of him just laying flat out on a woman, you know, manipulating her. So, you know, when all this comes into our awareness, there's, as teachers can feel a little bit more fearful about touching people in the appropriate way to not hurt them, but also to not make them feel uncomfortable. And I feel like, you know, so much can be transferred through the energy of your hands into somebody, and it does not have to be much at all. It can just be the simple in someone in warrior to just lightly touching and feathering the shoulders, bringing awareness to where, you know, to that part of their body. It doesn't have to be forceful. It doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be inappropriate. But I personally feel from my experience from being touched is how I learned so much about my body and my awareness in my body and where I felt in space too, because everyone's spatial awareness is different. You know, not everyone, I've never started yoga with mirrors. I've never done it apart from Bikram, and it felt totally strange for me being in front of a mirror. But a lot of people can't feel into their body because they don't have that mind-body connection. So for someone to come and just kind of feel and touch their body very gently can make them drop into a pose more deeply. Yeah.
I visualize, you know, when Akela cues that melts your shoulders like butter and having that physical touch of just gently I can imagine that would be very,
It's a beautiful
Yeah,
visualization,
yeah,
isn't it? Like
yes.
melting away.
yeah.
It's almost the energy rather than the physical, isn't it? And one of the things I love doing is when people are in warrior or something with the hands, is just gently doing that. And sometimes not even touching their finger. But it's like that's where you want their energy to go. So their hands are like that, and then just touch it, and they're like, oh, and their awareness goes to that place and they can reach into it rather than, you know, you
Pulling
wouldn't
the
pull
finger.
the finger.
Yeah, and I think, you know, we need to make sure, as Kella's been teaching us, that our instructions need to be very clear as our number one. And before we touch anyone, we need to observe first. You don't just go in and rush your energy into someone and just because you want to touch them. I think it's to do it safely, is to observe what they're doing, give them any cues that they may need before you touch them.
Yeah,
Touching is a
cues
love.
before touch is
Yeah.
really important.
Cues
Yeah.
before touch, because I
Mm.
think that by you cueing, say you come up to someone, you've noticed in downward dog that their shoulders are coming inwards, then you might stand, you know, next to them or in front of them and give them those personal cues, and then always ask, are you okay if I put my hand on your spine?
Before it goes there, right? Because
Yeah.
sometimes we can do that while we're actually about to touch the person. We're pretending to ask permission, but we've already actually entered their space.
Yes,
Mm.
so true.
We're not asking with the acceptance that it could be a no.
Yeah.
We're actually
Mhm.
doing it and saying and telling them we're going to touch them. Rather
Yeah.
than,
And is it okay for us to get a no?
Yeah.
You know, that can feel
Yeah.
also like rejection, or
Yeah.
you know, we have to be okay with someone trusting their own body and saying no as well. And maybe I mean, I quite like the idea of having a little card at the front of the mat. Who knows? I mean,
I was going to say, what are some ideas that we can throw around how you get us?
I came up
Yeah.
with a card
Yeah.
or something that each person takes as they walk into the room, and one side it has maybe like a mandala picture on it or something, or a touch or whatever you wanted to do. And if that's up, they're okay with touch. And if it's down with no picture or image, they don't want to be touched. But to also let people know, I think, at the beginning of a class, that it is okay if you change your mind at any point to flip your card.
I wonder whether the word adjustment might be more neutral than touch,
Yes, yeah,
because touch gets used a lot in abuse
in abuse, that's right.
situations. So
Yeah.
it's triggering for me hearing you say it.
Yeah, okay,
That's
so
what I just wondered.
adjusting
Yeah, adjusting. I'm just trying to think of some other words
that
that
we could use.
that we could use that would be, you know, safe for people.
Allowing you to give them the modifications or the
Mhm.
you know, we like
That doesn't necessarily indicate that you're going to touch them, though.
Hands-on adjustment.
adjustments.
Yeah.
Like, well,
Yeah, hands-on adjustments.
hands-on, yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess like I found it really confronting as a PT, like at first having to touch people, found that really hard.
How did you get through it, Jodie, then? What was some of the things?
Because it's the same like doing measurements. I found I'd get the shakes, like I'd get nervous because I had to tell them to put their foot here, bend their leg, and then I have to measure from their hip bone to here, and then I have to grab a tape from in between, and you're right in their space. But to get through it just took practice, because now if I said to someone in a plank about tucking their pelvis, I would place my hand on the back of their head, and I would have my hand underneath them, not touch them, but do a gesture of moving that top. So if you feel yourself tuck the pelvis under, but it just comes with practice.
And probably students that know you well enough, maybe.
Yeah, relationships. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if anyone else has got any ideas of
I love
what
the
else
card
you could put.
idea.
I just thought of a card, but or maybe at the beginning of a class, I've been in classes where they've said, you know, I'd like to go around today, and if I feel that, you know, some of you might need some adjustments, you know, please raise your hand if you're not comfortable with that. But then some people are a bit scared to do that. So like cards are maybe a more subtle way of doing that. I don't know.
Yeah. But I guess when
Do you ever say that?
No, I don't. I like, and I've got it wrong. I've got it wrong one time for sure, and I may have got it wrong other times. Where I might have said this, I think I said this early on in the piece of the training, is I there was a woman and she didn't disclose to me that she had like a learning difficulty, or there was something going on for her, and processing instructions was hard. And I was trying to help her with chaturanga to lift the belly to the spine, and she was in cat-cow shape, and I just had my hand hovering over her back and said, can you lift your back up towards my hand? And she was like, didn't understand. And then the other hand went under, can you lift your belly? I don't understand what you're talking about. And I said, well, if I put my hand here, can you press into that and lift away? And she really didn't like that. So there was, lots of warning and lots of sensing and feeling on my behalf, but there was embarrassment, confusion, there was a whole lot of stuff kind of playing out for her. And for me, that was like, some teachers are really adjusty, and I don't love that. I don't go around and adjust people very often. I will generally sense the room now and walk, and I'll go and stand next to the person. And if I feel that they're actually comfortable, then I'll ask. I'll ask them in the moment, would you like me to help you create some balance here, or whatever it is. Or, I've done with this group, I've just been I've come in and just kind of been there, which is a risk doing that. But I feel like if you put your agenda aside of wanting them to be correct and you go and stand near them, you'll know.
Yeah.
If you're gentle enough, you'll know if they're happy with it or not. And I'll generally start, say it's Ardha Chandrasana half moon pose, I'll generally start with like a finger on the hip. And then if they're happy with that and they're, then I might put my hip up against their hip and they like it. You can tell, it's a good thing. Yeah. So I don't know.
And I think that's the key.
I know my students pretty well though.
Yeah, because you've got the same people. So I think it's building trust first, isn't it, before you do anything like that. And maybe, the adjusting is multiple workshop style classes that we might run.
I was going to ask about that. How do you not lose flow if you're spending time coming and adjusting people? Like,
we're going to practice adjustment.
Yeah.
So we can get into that a little bit. The way I've seen it done really nicely is you would only adjust in a pose that people were happy to be in for a while.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that maybe Matt was paying more attention in the complicated poses, holding people there and looking around to adjust.
Yeah.
And that's a sign of a teacher that is more immature than, mature, have less practice.
Yeah.
With someone that can hold people in a hard pose and go around and adjust in the hard pose.
Yeah.
You don't want to do that.
I think that's where my brain's going at. Like if you're in something hard, like, half moon, and then you're going around and you're adjusting, like.
So you make it more, I guess for me, the way I do that is I make it playful.
Like I was just.
So it's like, okay, cool. All right, we'll just give this a couple more goes.
Yes.
And take your own time, and you can switch off sides if you want. I'll come around, and those that want a bit of help with balance, I'm here, blah, blah,
That's
blah.
beautiful.
So just make it a little bit, I think that's kind of really how I
allow
approach
that
it.
space to be able to, we're going to have a bit of a play with this
You
one.
did that when I was helping you that night. You said, we're going to workshop a bit this pose.
Yeah.
So we're going to have a few goes in and out of it. Yeah, that'll be
And there's a wall.
to go around and
There's a wall. If you want to go and try it with the wall, try it with the wall. If you want to partner up with someone,
And I think that's beautiful because it allows people
like
to go into the posture in a deeper way, doesn't it?
And learn
and play.
Yeah.
The other
learn how
thing
to
is,
play where that points are.
I think the classes that I've been to where there have been a lot of adjustment, as long as the teacher, this is my personal opinion, as long as the teacher isn't pinpointing the girls in the skimpiest clothes, and this happens in Bali a lot, and the ones that are like the youngest and the prettiest, and they're not always focusing on them and going and adjusting them all the time, and it's actually really evenly distributed among who's there and gender, race, whatever. It's all just, everyone's just a person and they go and help the people. I feel completely comfortable, but I have been in plenty of classes where it's clear that the teacher is a little bit obsessed with one of the students and goes and spends a bit of time with them. I really don't like that. If the person's coming around like, Janet Stone, I'm so fucking into her, I want to go to so many more of her classes. She came around and adjusted and I felt like I'd been touched by God. It was just like beautiful because her energy was just gorgeous and she was so like fluid with her movement, and as she touched, she just like she drew your energy in the direction. There wasn't actually a touch. It was more just kind of like, yeah. And it was just like, oh, that was amazing. I'll go there. You know, it was so beautiful.
good.
I think
I love it.
it's a
But do you
real,
think that that's her?
Yeah,
it's a
I was
real-
going to say, don't you think that that's her
It's her
energy, her
energy.
intention?
yeah.
Because if you
And she
just
walked
walked
around
up
a lot.
to you and she just plonked her
Yeah,
hands on you, you're
yeah.
not going to feel as
No.
safe.
The other thing that I think is fun with adjustments and touch is in the room, when it happens in the room, and you did the strap with Ekapada Padmasana variations, you know, when you lay your supine, you're laying back and you have the strap over the foot and you take it, you know, forwards and across and towards you and stuff.
That's what we're talking about outside, is it? Is that that one? Or not?
No,
No, it's a different one. Okay.
Yeah, and I had someone next to me because I was just sitting out for the class view tour, and when the legs go across into the other person's body, you can make it really fun then too, right? And I just held my friend's leg. I've never really I've given her a cuddle every now and again, you know, I've known her for like 4 or 5 years, you know, the yoga student, and I just held her foot, and that was really nice. It was like this moment of connecting that was really just nice. There was nothing funny about it at all. So sometimes when you can, you know, bigger classes or whatever where people are, you know, oh, you know, feel free to, you know, tickle your friend's hand as you move, as you're coming in and out of the arms here, you know, like there's kind of ways you can bring it in.
And that kind of brings you into the joy of what you're doing too, and the connection, like you say,
Yeah.
to the moment, doesn't it?
Yeah, because ultimately yoga is about coming into our bodies more, right? And for me, I know that it wasn't until I was an adult, and it wasn't even that long ago, that I had this moment of realization, and I wept and wept about it. It was beautiful, where it was the words that came to me were touch to heal, not to harm. And it was huge for me.
So true.
I was like, oh my God, there is such a difference between the two here. I mean, especially working with horses and how sensitive they are, right? But with humans, it's like you're touching to heal. You're not touching to create any disruption or any disturbance in them at all. You want to create the most
Because
gentle.
touch can be so triggering. I mean, if you've someone that's had abuse,
For most people have had some kind of abuse, whether it's younger or rape or anything.
Yeah.
Most people have had.
And also if you touch them in a certain area where, you know, I've got one lady that you cannot touch her head because of the abuse that she had. And so if you were to come in a yoga class, just, you know, my yoga teacher used to pull my ponytail.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, like, so my crown was up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Did you like that?
Oh, it hurt. It would have got me lifting my crown up.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it worked, but it
there
was.
might have been other ways to do that.
But he was no Ashtanga teacher. He was very hands-on and very.
Very visceral. Is it visceral? No,
He'd be
tactile.
adjusting you in Paschimottanasana and he'd be like,
Good.
good.
I find that really
Still love about it.
Did you like that person?
He's a great guy. It's just what he was grown up with, and he was not. He didn't cross over the boundary.
So he was sensual, but he managed to contain his sexuality.
I don't think
What
he
do- what
meant
do you
to be
think?
sensual. I think it was just the way.
But your experience of it was clearly sensual.
That's
So
right.
how did you then?
His touch wasn't sensual. So
Yeah.
his voice was saying in a way that was sensual.
Ooh,
But his
that's
touch was
good.
quite firm.
Right.
So it wasn't like sexual, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Well, when I colour
That's
my feet,
Often crossing the boundaries.
Boundaries.
for a
You
long-
sensual about that? Do you want to
no,
say
that was a childhood. That was a childhood
Yeah.
moment
Yeah.
that happened for me. That
Comfort. Yeah.
that's like it was something so simple,
Yeah.
but it
That's
was
what I
an
mean, it's
ultimate
really
trigger
memories.
of childhood, and I
Yeah.
was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
And then I was in this.
When people in Shavasana are lifting up through the back of the skull can be really beautiful and releasing. And I used to give a little head massage every time I first started as well. But now I'm just like, what makes me think that everyone wants that? And then also, you know, because that was what I wanted to give extra to be worthy, you know, it was all coming from that, really. But then I realized, well, I'm picking up one person's energy and then I'm putting it onto the next person's head, and then the person at the end gets 10 people's heads worth of energy.
I haven't thought about it like that, but yeah, that's probably true. And also, if you're teaching yoga classes, you also need to look after your energy.
Yeah.
If you're giving
Not
all that
mixed,
energy
yeah.
out, you're not going to be able to sustain that
Yeah,
either.
for sure.
Yeah, because we will do a bit of that touching in a minute, so then you can actually feel what it's like. So yeah, when we talk about the emotions,
Adjusting.
Adjusting. So
I don't know, is there a better word?
Anyone's
Is there a
ponytail.
better
is
word?
I'm a bit touched, so I feel like I just
It
say
triggers me,
naturally.
I reckon.
I won't say it anymore. Adjust. Breaks me to say it again, because I need to learn that too, right? Otherwise, I'll be using it.
Well, in some ways it's healing too, because I know from my experience of you, there's nothing to be worried
Nothing
about, you know, so
harmful.
in some ways it's actually healing, but I'm just thinking more generally for people, you know, I'm going to come around with the class tonight and touch you.
Yeah, that does not
I
sound
reckon.
good.
Yeah.
I went to yoga and I got touched up. It was great.
Yeah, we don't want to see
That's
that.
what you go to ecstatic dance for, isn't it? Not going there.
So I just wrote down different feelings that might pop up. So what might be some positive feelings that
For the
come up
person
from touch?
experiencing it, or from
For the person experiencing, if you have beautiful intentional touch, not touch, an alignment in class, like Akela just explained, that was blissful for her. What are some of the emotions that might come up for you in that? If you can imagine someone coming up and adjusting you in a beautiful way, how do you think that might make you feel?
I think that I would be more connected to the pose, so I would go inward more and connect to that energy. So I think that would be beautiful.
Yeah, I agree.
you'd want to feel relaxed, I reckon. That's what I would, you know, relaxed. Because even when we put in effort, if we have relaxed effort, that's still powerful and present, right?
Yeah, agree.
And when I'm thinking about the times that I have been adjusted, that it has been a good adjustment. It has been that, you know, and release. And was it the other day I was in forward Virasana and you came and did the lower, the sacrum release? That was an exhale.
Yeah.
It's an exhale feeling for me.
Yeah.
When I get a good adjustment.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I used to have a yoga teacher many years ago. Doesn't do it anymore, and she would always adjust when we were in forward Virasana or in child's pose. We were all just waiting.
They're going to do that today. It feels so
Bum scratch for a dog,
Like,
right?
we're just waiting for that moment. Yeah.
And that's what you can set yourself up for, which can actually be good for you, but it can also be not so
If you do it
great.
all the time.
Yeah, because if you talk about what Akela was saying before, if you stop doing that, I remember a girl at Bikram Yoga, she used to walk, always she'd just come walk on the backs of my feet, and oh my god, and when she didn't do it, I was so disappointed. So I'm like, no, come walk on my feet.
You try giving the oils every time and then forgetting one time.
Yeah,
Oh my
right.
God.
So you would be
Red
you
oils.
to mix it up a bit, not be doing the same thing.
Trademark things. Don't have a trademark, have
But
multiple.
they're so beautiful. Like sometimes, and only sometimes we come along in Shavasana and she'd be pushing your feet.
Yeah.
But not often.
Do you think he is ready for it? The other thing that can be really sweet, thank you, Q, for being my model, is when someone's in Shavasana and you come up and you pick up their feet and you gently
We're going to do that.
swing them and then
Yeah, lifting those hips.
Yeah. But I did that just because I was playing with Simon the other night,
we don't need to hear about
experimenting. Oh, good. And I did that with him because I do that often, even in the massage.
yeah.
So, you know, and this is where it comes into what you think might feel good. It might feel good on one person. It's not going to feel good on the next person. He's like, oh, I like that part, but I didn't like, right?
Yeah.
I didn't like the swaying of the hips. It didn't feel as good to me. So,
You didn't like it?
no, he didn't like it as much as the pulling and the shaking and whatever. So it's just interesting that we have our perception of what we think might feel good on someone, but it's not necessarily the case. Yeah. So then we need to, so I think we've covered mostly relaxation, trust can come up, safety, just that feeling of love and connection, I think is the most
Care.
important. Care.
Yeah,
for.
care is the one. When
Yeah.
I felt cared and loved for when you
Mm.
just scratched my feet.
And that's a simple one, right? And you're not really touching someone
Yeah.
because the blanket's there. But then one of the things that I have noticed, if you know how sometimes when people are in Shavasana, they have their feet out of the blanket. Some people do not like their feet covered
Yes.
or touched.
Yep.
And so they will have the feet out of the blanket. Don't go and put the blanket over their feet. If they're shuffling to try and get their tootsies under the blanket, that's entirely different. But when they're laying there and clearly there's almost like it's funny, they almost have a line.
I know.
There's the blanket, here's my ankle, there's my feet, they're out of the blanket. And it's often very neatly, like it's not a mishap kind of blanket placement, it's very deliberate. So it's good to notice that with people.
Also,
So
when
true, right?
there, when you've got those Shavasana is about having the feet laid so that the hips are like.
Some people though, in or out, depends on the hips.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you're tucking them, you would have to be very mindful to tuck them as they are, not
Yes.
to bring.
Yeah,
Bring
so
them
true.
in.
Yeah.
And also what you visually see is straight on someone. They don't feel straight. So even if you see that one hip, one leg's turned out this way and one's
So
coming in,
true.
that for them feels normal.
Yeah.
So whatever they've relaxed into is their norm. You go and move them, they're going to feel awkward.
So you also can say, and this is what I do say to people quite a lot in Shavasana, is if they are off center, and they're often horse riders actually that clearly are riding more one side, weight more one side than the other. I'll say to them, hey, just before you settle in there, Mel, whatever, can you look down the length of your body? And they'll often go, what do you mean? And I'll just have a look and they're, oh, I'm crooked, yeah. And let them self-adjust, because when they can feel it, adjust, and then feel it again, then that's a really good resetting pattern rather than
For
going
them
and
to do it
moving.
rather than you. So true.
Yeah.
So true.
Yeah.
So yeah, and also belonging, I think, is another one that came up for me, because I felt like when I felt part of the community, and I felt like I was seen when people were really seeing my body and doing it in a nurturing, gentle way as well. It's a belonging to a group. It's been like, people that come to you, they come for those reasons. So some negative feelings that might come up for people.
Well, be fear.
Fear, trauma, distrust,
All of those things.
disassociation.
Yeah.
Mm.
And definitely triggering of
Rejection.
trauma, rejection, unsafe.
It's also
And
important.
inadequacy too, because some people probably feel like I'm not good enough. She's having to come and adjust me. So I'm not feeling good enough for this class. I'm not doing it right.
Totally.
That can happen in GP, I feel. People get really flustered and they feel like, oh, I can't get it, I can't get it. And so I generally try to give some sort of reassurance, like there's an equipment called the TRX, which requires you to be able to move it through body weight. And people find it really, really hard. So I do actually say, this exercise can be really tricky to understand where to put your body weight. So then when they feel reassured that, or I'll say, do you know what? Everyone today found that exercise really challenging. And they're like, oh, okay. So I'm not
just me.
Yeah.
And also once you've done the adjustment, to actually even say, give them reassurance. Yeah, like that's great. You've opened up your hips or whatever it is to make them feel. Yeah. And how does that feel for you? I think it's really important to say as well. Like, how does that feel for you? Is there anything else that you think you might say? But just to make sure that they're feeling good in whatever that you've done in that adjustment, especially if it is something more, rather than just a touch with a finger or whatever. But always checking in, I think it's important.
I mean, they can also feel out of control because somebody else is taking over that little bit of control.
Balancing, especially for sure, like Adhatandrasana, we will play with that quite a lot because that's quite a tricky one to support someone with, and then release the support is really tricky. Maybe also it's when you guys do have your crew that come to you or you go and teach at, that there's that slow build of trust around what you can do with them as an adjustment. And some of the times pairing up and letting people choose to pair up has worked really well. It's like, okay, we're going to do some workshopping tonight. For this bit, if you just want to join your partner next to you, so where you would then look at Ardha Chandrasana against the wall and one person would help do the hip hold against the wall or something. But that would be like after a year or two of knowing those people, right? Whereas at the start, you would introduce it by saying something like when you're in either cat-cow or plank, look at your neighbour next to you. This is like the steps, right, to build that trust. Look at your neighbour next to you and just check whether their bum height is the same height as their shoulders and let them know if it's not. And then you look around the room and no one does it, right? And you're like, okay, people are clearly uncomfortable here. And then going around, go, okay, well, if you haven't already told your neighbour, if you can see that their belly is really low, can you tell them now? Tell them now. And then they'll, oh. So it's just that helping people
To help each other.
and to feel helped
Yeah.
as well, which is, you know, so I guess it's just having a few tools in your toolkit and how to break people.
And some people are probably
into that.
comfortable with doing that, and some people aren't comfortable because
No,
they're,
some people hate massage.
Yeah.
I find that mind-blowing. What? Actually, my girlfriend, but that's trauma.
trauma.
So, yeah.
Trauma's
Yeah.
a big one.
So that's
And
really,
also not
really
feeling
good to
confident
know.
in your body.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think the people that feel really uncomfortable with their body are not possibly going to be
Come
coming
together.
to yoga
Yeah.
as well. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
feel like when they come to the mat that they are ready at some capacity to show up. Yeah.
And that's where I felt, Keller, before when you said, you know, the ones with their skimpy clothes and they seem to know what they're doing, but they're the ones getting the attention. It's like, I don't get that because people, like, everyone needs help. And generally it's the ones that are newer or whatever that you can tell that are new to yoga themselves that would need the adjusting, not.
That's just going purely on sexual attraction, Jodie. That's all it is.
Yeah.
That's so sad.
It just is.
Yeah.
It just is. It is sad. I'm not
It is
not
sad.
accusing it at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
But yeah, you don't understand it, and I don't understand it or like it because it's not me.
Because it's not who we are.
But that's
Yeah.
just, you know, it's just interesting. I think the comfortability I feel in a class is dependent, when there is adjustment, is dependent on that, on how much attention.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess mine's the PT that I can tell that it's not usually those ones that need the help,
Yeah,
you know, so why would I even bother?
I
I might be
know.
going over here,
But
but this one,
maybe they're the ones that want the attention.
maybe
So, you know,
Yeah,
they're the
there you
ones that
go.
are, for the teacher, they're the ones that are more open to it.
open to it, yeah.
And I think too, as a teacher, like I know when I was helping out Keller that night, there's a couple that I really wanted to adjust a lot because they weren't really getting in alignment at all.
Yeah.
But I was really conscious not to go up to them all the time because I didn't want them to feel like
Yeah.
they were inadequate and they weren't doing it right. And that I was picking on them or anything, you know, like, so it's a real balance, isn't it, between
It is.
moving that around.
And sometimes it's that thing is if that's all they can do in the pose.
That's
So
right.
you're
Yeah.
not up to them, wanting them to be perfectly in the
Yeah,
pose. It's not going to happen.
Yeah,
No.
that's right. You just
That's
leave
right.
them, let them
Yeah.
be, let them enjoy the pose for what it is and what they can achieve, and it's good
And
enough.
in time, after they've been for a long time, etc., I guess then you can, if you feel they could do more.
Yeah, I feel they
Yeah.
could do more.
Yeah, then it's that building that relationship though, isn't it?
I
Yeah.
think so. It is.
Yeah.
And trust. So what might be some physical signs? So I want to talk about, you know, and I get this in massage with people all the time, that if something's uncomfortable or it doesn't feel good, what kind of physical things will you see with someone if you were to touch them and they might be uncomfortable?
Tightening,
Yeah.
pulling away,
Pulling away. Yeah.
stress on their face.
Freezing.
Yeah.
Mm.
Breathing, not breathing.
Yeah.
Stop breathing.
All that lazy breathing.
Yeah. Or breathing really fast.
Yeah.
That's right. So it could be either or.
Mm.
Flinching away from you, like that you stepped into their space unannounced, especially if someone's in focus and you've stepped in without any kind of awareness that you're coming to them.
Yeah.
Especially if you're coming in from behind, I think it's really important to always let someone know that they're coming.
I would keep my voice
Gently.
going actually.
Yeah,
when
that's
I
a good
approach
way of
someone.
doing it.
I keep talking.
Yeah.
Just
So
keep
they can
talking.
hear you coming closer. Yeah. So you don't want to startle someone.
Mm.
Yeah, and moving away, like if you were to adjust and they're doing this kind of action, you know, they're not comfortable with that. So yeah, just touching people without force is really important, and being present in yourself is really important. And it's almost like you need to be in that meditative space and bring all that attention in and energy into your hands before you intentionally touch someone. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like I bring that intention, I can feel the energy in my hands before I even put my hands onto someone, so that transfer of energy is healing. Does that make sense? Yes. I've had people adjust me and just come up and just push down, and it shocks me. And then I feel really unbalanced and scattered after that's happened. Or I had another lady come in Shavasana who was pulling my neck out, but she came into my spot really quickly. I didn't even really know she was there, kind of.
And you don't
awkwardly.
look your neck.
you out of yourself.
Yeah, and my neck, and she
Yeah.
awkwardly pulled my neck, but I knew she wasn't feeling confident. So I sensed in her hands that she was not confident touching me. If you make a choice to touch someone, you have to go in with confidence. Otherwise, don't touch them, because they will feel through your hands the energy that you're not feeling confident in what you're doing, and that feels distrust straight away.
Can you explain the way you embodied that transition between intention and actual hands-on? Like, what do? Are you taking 2 breaths? Are you turning your attention inwards first? Are you tuning into them before you? Are you reaching out to them before your hands actually reach them? Like, how does that feel for you?
I feel like it's like a channeling energy for me. So
you first turn in.
Turn in.
Yeah.
So I turn in.
Check in.
Take a breath.
Mm.
And then the intention for me is always love.
Mm.
And then the hands go in gently and softly. So if you don't bring that awareness before you touch somebody, or if your brain's scattered, or you're nervous, or they'll feel that.
Or you
Trust
think
me,
and
they'll feel
do and don't think, stop,
And
feel and do.
Yes.
Think,
Stop,
think,
feel
feel.
and do.
And you are feeling into that person's energy before you're even touching them. Because I think once you can connect with that, it's then when the intuition comes in as to how much is too much, how much is too little, whether that person even wants you in their space. You can feel that. And you might feel then that person just needs little nudges of trust rather than a big adjustment to start with. So it's kind of channeling the energy in. It's all about your intent with helping somebody. You're not helping someone because of your ego. You're not helping someone because you want to be touched and you want to touch them. Your intent is pure, and it is to help that person heal, open,